Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Tommy Sheridan and JP Mason, where we'll be talking to Terry Christian. What a thrill it is, Tommy, you're back with Terry. It's a reunion.
It is. The last time was when United got beat Old Trafford 4-1 by Liverpool.
But that's not what he's thinking about.
You're a bad omen that day.
Terry took me down. The first time I'd ever been to a Man U Liverpool game, he was all excited. It was brilliant. Old Trafford was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Way up high, lovely seats. And I loved Vidic. Vidic was my favourite Man U player. I'm dead excited to see Vidic. And Man U scored. Terry's like, right away, oh, good luck. You're a good luck chap. They get beat 4-1. Vidic gets sent off. Oh, no,
Torres with my hands.
Torres ripped Vidic apart, didn't
he? He says, that's the last thing. I'm not being invited. He's never invited me back. But today he said I can come back. He's forgiven me.
Yeah.
I wish we had that team back.
I know. It's changed a lot, isn't it? Terry,
Yeah,
I mean, when I think of Manchester United, you're speaking to JP to your left there, born in Manchester, but a Celtic supporter. So he's got leanings to Man U as well, JP, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. They're not as close as Celtic because I've lived with Celtic, I've breathed Celtic, I've been at home and away with Celtic for so many years, but Manchester United I absolutely love, you know.
There was always those signs, there were always like the big, because testimonials that had for players would either be United versus City, but then for Bobby Charlton they did Celtic.
Yeah.
And I remember going to that and I think it was 1-1 or 0-0. And it was Kenny Dalglish and Lou Macari playing for Celtic, you know, and then the Brian Robson testimonial, what I remember about that was I'd just finished the first series of The Word. So I've gone back, I still have to get buy a house, but I've suddenly got about 40 grand in the bank. I've never had that in my life, you know what I mean? So I was staying at Mum and Dad's council house, you know, we lived in Old Trafford. So I thought, I'll get the early bus into town and spend some of this money, right? And so I remember getting on the bus from Trafford Bar, and it stopped on City Road, opposite St Brendan's Irish Club, and it was 9:30 in the morning. And all these Celtic fans start piling on, and they'd all been in there since like 8 o'clock, and the priest had opened up the club for a pint and fried breakfast.
Sounds about right.
I'd forgotten all about the testimonial game that night. This is like 9:30 in the morning, and they're all piling on. And I hadn't been out much. I'd been in a bubble just doing. Good, hear that guy afterward. What are you doing on the bus? Where's your Maserati?
Game, JP?
No.
Where's your Maserati? You know, they're all taking a piss out of me, and then they were all like surrounding me, and there was only me upstairs on the bus and all of them, and they're hanging out the tricolours out of the window and singing Michael Fagan, doing the Queen, Pigeon Didn't Scream and all that stuff, and the Manchester Martyrs song, which I didn't even know. And but it was like, yeah, it was just bizarre. And then when I went to, obviously there was the game we beat you 3-2, but then with the game where we beat you 3-0 in the Champions League, I'd just done an interview with BBC Radio Scotland, or BBC Scotland for the TV, and they gave me 2 tickets, corporate tickets, and I already had my own tickets. So there was all these drunken Celtic fans all looking for tickets. So this young lad came and said, you got any spare tickets, mate? I said, I've got 2. I said, you can have them, but I just wondered if they ever made it in because it was in a proper corporate bit, and they were the corporate tickets for the BBC Gaelic service. But I don't know why they'd be at United. But
There's no way he got in, eh? That guy never got in, did he?
Him and his mate, he was a young lad, he was about 22.
See, to be honest, the powers of Celtic fans being able to get in places, I'm sure they probably they sweet talk their way in.
Very drunk.
On the way. The thing is, I remember reading your book, and you told that story, and I thought to myself, Terry Christian would be brilliant for an interview for this podcast. And we spoke about it about 4 years ago, but COVID obviously put a stop to it.
Yeah.
So you're back on the road, you're in Edinburgh. Tell us a wee bit about your show.
Well, the show is one that I did many years ago. I got asked to do one of these evening with things, and I get them a bit, you know, because sometimes you're not asked the right questions, and I just thought, let's try it as a stand-up show. So I was going to call it Life and Times of a Lucky Sod, because everything that's happened to me has been by accident, really. You know, I mean, it's just crazy, the idea that I even ended up in the media. I was on the dole, I was staying in bed till 2 in the afternoon, and my mum happened to work on the school dinners with a woman called Mrs. Flanagan, whose son Kevin Flanagan ran the Young Christian Workers in Trafford Park, and he'd been asked to supply unemployed kids for a show being made by the World in Action team Gus MacDonald was presenting it. He used to be the editor of World in Action, called Devil's Advocate, and it was all based on the findings of the Scarman report after the 1981 riots.
Yeah.
And so I was on that for like 7 weeks and, got through. So I was going to call it, and I thought, part 1, Naked Confessions of a Recovering Catholic, because it is Catholicism in some way that sort of malformed my character, and it gives you sort of a, how can I put it, a moral compass, albeit a bit shady, with a heavy season of superstition, which I kind of liked. And I've found out since, because I've had therapy, that there's a lot of, especially among supporters, a lot of magical thinking. And I grew up in a house that was grieving, so I was the 4th of 6 kids. But my oldest sister died of a burst appendix when she was 11, and it was just devastating. So, do you know what I mean? It was so all of that. So my mum decided to try the religion thing, and all her anxiety went via that. This doesn't sound like there's a lot of laughs in it, but it does get better. So that's the founding thing of it.
Yeah.
So I did that and then wrote a show around it, and then I do a thing on the saints and what they do, and that's quite funny, because you'd have that and all the stuff about holy water in your hallway, them little cheap tiny, they were about $2.99, weren't they? A plastic Sacred Heart or a plastic Virgin Mary at Lourdes or whatever. And it'd always dry up because it didn't hold enough holy water to kind of... and it was only my dad using it when he went to the bookies. It didn't help him much, I can tell you. No, he had a system, my dad. He would only ever bet on horses with Irish names. And you go, well, that's where you're going wrong. He won once on a horse called Your Man, right? In the Grand National. It romped home at 14:01 or something.
You're right, though, that there is that magic. You're believing in kind of like fairy tales, aren't you, a lot of the time when you look at religion, Terry? Yeah,
But I mean, maybe it's to do with manifestation, because we are the intelligence of the universe, aren't we? So maybe if just whatever you believe makes it true on the quantum level. There's something weird going on, isn't there?
When you were growing up then, talk to us about music. What was surrounding you growing up in that household?
Well, we grew up right on the edge of, so where Old Trafford joined Moss Side Hume, and I mean on our street, it was like mainly Irish, a lot of Jamaicans as well, and they'd have parties on a Saturday night because there weren't many clubs for them to go to, and they had big backyards on the kind of old housing that backed onto ours, because we were privately renting, outside toilets, but they had quite big backyards, so they'd have parties and all the reggae blasting out. The big reggae shop in Moss Side was only around the corner from us on Moss Lane West, called Murray's. And then there was a lad down the road called Roman, who was like Ukrainian, and he was one of our Tony's best mates, and they were into what was called Raries at the time, which was the soul records and big holes in, which became Northern Soul later on, called Northern Soul. They were Raries then, and you could buy them at Murray's. So there was all of that, obviously. And then when I was at school, I ended up I was at the same primary school, the same class. And then 3 of us from our primary school passed and went to St. Bede's, which is a big thing in them days. Your parents are never prouder of you than passing your 11 plus and actually getting into St. Bede's. It was like you'd gone up there to Oxford or something. And everything was downhill after that, to be fair. but it was John Marr at a Buzzcocks, who lived on Milner Street. And so we used to call for him going to school every day. And so I remember him, he was big into Slade. He actually won a competition to meet Slade. And there's a picture of him in his St. Bede's uniform, aged about 14, with all the guys out of Slade at the Odeon Cinema in Manchester, for the launch of their film, in Flame, Slade in Flame. This film that they made, and there's John Marr. And then he ended up in Buzzcocks.
But I didn't realise Slade were skinheads until about 2 weeks ago. They were a skinhead band before they became the glam rock, the image that you know of Slade.
He had such a great voice, Noddy. He's a big soul boy, Noddy older. All those Brummy guys were, Robert Plant, Ozzy Osbourne, they were all into soul music, not heavy metal. It's weird, because the heavy rock fans, a lot of them, they don't like soul music or any kind of black music. Whereas like all the guys who were the singers, that's what they grew up on, the blues and that stuff. I mean, Noddy, like James Brown, all the old Northern Soul, the disco stuff from the 70s, massive into Noddy. I mean, it's quite funny, I used to, when I did The Word, I used to go down to London on a Thursday, and Noddy used to get on at Wilmslow on the London train, first class. So I don't do steerage. I never did. You know, I'm kind of at heart a Marxist who likes to enjoy all the facets of bourgeois living. And
Nothing too good for a one class, boy. Nothing too good for a one class.
That's right. But it was quite funny. So I'd worked with Noddy at Key 103. You know, he used to always want me to drive his show, you know, back in 1988, 89, you know, look after his show and produce it for him. Because the others would faff around too much, you know what I mean, and be overly kind of try and micromanage it all. And I'd just let him get on with it. And so he'd get on the train and we'd meet there, and all the way down to London, we just, you know, geek out talking about music and this, that and the other.
Wow.
And we both went and got drunk. We worked for Century Radio, which was like regional, so Northwest, Northeast and East Midlands, and our shows were like regionalised. So we were the competition prize. You have a meal with me and Noddy Holder. Oh, pardon my French, you know. A meal with me and Noddy Holder at L'Escargot in London. So we were there with all these blokes, and me and Noddy got absolutely hammered. And I remember Noddy was that, and he was telling me all the famous women that he'd done.
Wow.
But I was that drunk, I can't remember. And I said to him, you know, I said, but you know, the other year at the Pride of Manchester, said, oh, you told me that. He was with his missus was my boss for a while, and then a moat was Sue, she's great as well. And I said, you told me all, you know, I said, was one of them Lee Remick? He said, oh, I can't tell you now, that's the best way. Tell you when you're drunk, you forget and I forget.
Wow.
Take it to the grave. Yeah. It was a really impressive list. It wasn't just the what. It wasn't your obvious. It was like, bloody hell, you were punching, mate. But then again, you were massive, weren't they?
Did he tell
Three
you?
#1 albums in 1973. Everyone forgets about the others, think of them as a singles band. But 3 #1 albums in 1 year.
Astonishing.
But did he tell you his royalties that he gets from Merry Christmas, everybody? Because I mean, God Almighty, imagine how much money he must make.
It's not just the royalties off that. It's also they did Come On Feel the Noise.
Oasis.
Quiet Riot had a #1 in America with that, and a #1 album with that track on. Before Oasis, yeah. The Oasis one didn't sell that massively.
That was just a B-side, wasn't it?
Yeah. See, when I had the pleasure, Terry, of meeting Bonehead, Oasis are one of the
He's a great bloke.
Yes. I asked him,
a good
he
guy.
did your foreword, didn't you, for your book? And I asked him the question.
Oh, no, he did a bit of bump on the back, yeah.
Oh, that's what it was, aye. I said to him, what is it about Manchester and music? Why are you able to produce so many talented musicians and songwriters? I'm going to ask you the question. I'll tell you what he thought. What's your take on it?
I think kind of poverty and this sounds awful, but there's a certain pointless belligerence about Mancunians. We like annoying people, but it was never a barony. We never had a local lord who owned the place. It was actually built by the people itself. And so it had that, you know, a little bit ruthless, but it was all about what can you do? You do it. And also in some ways Tony Wilson helped because he was almost like, I did great lives about him on Radio 4, and I described Tony Wilson's like the Michael Collins of Manchester culture, because he turned up when we were kind of on our knees and he went, get off your knees, you're the best place in the UK, because although Manchester bands were really big in the 60s, you know, I mean, you're talking like in the USA in 1965, for 6 weeks solid, you had Manchester bands at #1 in the US Billboard charts. And 1 week in April of 1965, Manchester bands were numbers 1, 2 and 3 in the US Billboard charts. Herman's Hermits, Freddie and the Dreamers, Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders, and then the Hollies, of course, they were huge over there. And, you know, 10cc, they had a #1 in the USA with them Not In Love, you know, later on, but we never had that kind of coolness. And again, it was, you know, I mean, Graham Nash out of the Hollies joined Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. We had a lot of kind of good songwriters and stuff who were knocking around. You know, Graham Gouldman, who later at 10cc, he wrote Heart Full of Soul for the Yardbirds, For Your Love as well, No Milk Today for Herman's Hermits, all that stuff. So we were big then, but that kind of thing of having your own indie scene came from Tony Wilson. But obviously they leapt on it because otherwise you've got to go down and kiss arse at people in London, and that sticks in your craw a bit. You can't be bothered with it. I mean, there's a bit of that in my show, actually. Well, there's a lot of that in my show.
I like that attitude, though, Terry. Bonehead actually said that he felt there was a community aspect to the Irish diaspora.
Oh yeah.
You know, whereby they would maybe get the instruments out because they had nothing else, and they would sing songs, and it
Well,
would
there
create
was always that singing, yeah. You weren't looked upon as being a bit effeminate if you could play something, whereas I think with the English kids you were. But with the Irish kids, I mean, obviously the Irish dancing, you say, I'm not putting one of them funny dress things on, but with the actual music, because Bonehead could play the accordion, couldn't he?
Right.
So he plays a little bit of it on the end run out bit of an Oasis track. I can't think which one. So he played all that traditional music, you know what I mean? And they would do it, but more the ones from the west of Ireland. You know, Mum and Dad were Dubliners, you know, and we were too poor for any of that stuff. You know, we couldn't afford anything. But it was like, yeah, there was always that, and there were always kids who would, you know, drum. I mean, it was weird with John Marr because he lived in a tiny little terraced house. So, and he was a drummer, but his drum kit was set up at St. Bede's in the music room.
Right.
And the music teacher was a young, trendy guy from Glasgow, funny enough, Mr. McGregor. You know, and he let him go in there. I mean, this is a really traditional little Catholic grammar school founded in 1876 with the philosophy that works, why change anything? It was like Borstal with incense, and yet he let him practice, you know, his drumming every lunchtime in a big soundproof music room.
It's brilliant. I mean, you mentioned there that a Glaswegian. I remember meeting you years ago, Terry. You were doing a thing for Sky TV, and I spoke to you briefly, and you were talking about the difference between Edinburgh and Glasgow, and they said that you preferred Glasgow because it was more like Manchester. Do you still think that's
well, Glasgow reminded me a bit of London.
Right.
You know, so it was like, I mean, sorry, not London, Dublin. It reminded me a bit of Dublin, Glasgow. So it had that kind of vibe to it, you know. Bit of edge there. Well, more edge than you'd like to really look at.
A wee bit.
Because with Dublin's like that, people all think, oh, you know, oh, great. You think, blimey, you walk round the wrong corner there. I mean, even my dad, who grew up in the Liberties, he used to say, don't drink north of the Liffey after 7 o'clock. You know what I mean? But, yeah, I mean, it had that edge to it. And also, you had all the bands come out of Glasgow. Yeah. Although I keep finding out they're all from Bellshill. How did Bellshill produce so many bands?
A great question, JP.
Well, currently Bathgate in West Lothian's a hot spot for you, which is where I grew up. You've got like the Snuts, Lewis Capaldi. There's quite a few that have all come from that neck of the woods, which is weird. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Glasgow and Bellshill. I mean, the Glasgow.
Bellshill though, in particular, because you think Teenage Fan Club, Soup Dragons, were they from there?
They took John Peel for a chippy in Bellshill.
Yeah.
Teenage Fan Club,
And Matt Busby, of course.
Absolutely.
Wasn't Chucky Brian McClare from Bellshill?
Yeah, Billy McNeil as well.
Billy McNeil.
The statue to Billy McNeil, Bellshill.
That we were talking about. Teenage Fan Club, have I said them already? There was loads anyway, loads of.
And there's now Rianne Downey's from Bellshill, isn't she?
Oh, she's out with Paul Heaton.
Wasn't the girl out of Texas,
Charlene Spiteri, possibly?
From Bellshill.
Yeah, there was so much talent. So it takes me on to that next question about this kind of affinity that I grew up with when it was Celtic and Man U fans. There seemed to be an affinity, Terry. You talk about testimonials. We were always coming down to Old Trafford for testimonials. Is that, again, an Irish link, do you think?
Well, I think it might be a Catholic link almost accidentally, because the guy who founded Man United really came up with the name Manchester United. They were nearly called Manchester Celtic. Was a guy called Louis Rocca, and he was of Italian descent. Mm-hmm. And what happened was when Man United were wiped out and had no money in the 1930s, Louis Rocca kept them alive. And what he did was he set up a scouting network with parish priests. So, you know, if you see any good young lads, let us know. So, you know, the Catholic Church was always good at having a parish team and sorting stuff like that, you know, community things out. And so that's where he scouted all his players. So, funny enough, you know, if you look at the players, Busby Babes even, and then later, you know, that 60s team, he'd scouted Nobby Styles from St Patrick's in Collyhurst, Brian Kidd from St Patrick's in Collyhurst, I think Shay Brennan came from there as well. You know, so it was like all these Catholic players, you know, Carlo Sartori, a mate of mine, his wife, her dad came over from Ireland when he was 16 to join United's youth team. And, you know, he never made it, but he settled in Manchester and had a family and everything. And he's got this great picture of him in the youth team at United and the handwritten letter from Louis Rocca asking him to come and be in the youth team at United. So I think it was more that than anything, you know, so it was, wasn't really a Catholic Protestant thing, you know, between United and City, the way that, you know, you got the Celtic Rangers thing. It was more, so what? And United would never kick off at 3 o'clock on a Good Friday, which, you know, was a bit, you know, my mum used to make you go to that 3 o'clock service, even though it wasn't an obligation. So I used to try, but she would let you off if you went to see City.
Right.
So City would kick off at 3 o'clock on a Good Friday. So if you pretended you had mates going, I even remember going on my own once just to get out of it. City Forest. And Nick told me because it was a boring game. And my mum said, what score was it? And I said, 1-1. And she slapped me around the head and accused me of nicking the money because apparently Forest had come back at the end and scored 2 goals and won 3-1. They got relegated. So it was about 1970-71 season or whatever, where Forest got relegated in the 70s. But yeah, I mean, there is that, you know, United Celtic, again, it's a working class thing. I mean, maybe football's changing now a lot. But it was that working class thing, the same with music. You know, you'd ask, why is it Manchester bands, Liverpool bands are always popular in like Glasgow and places like that? But you feel the vibe, don't you? You feel the energy. It's about something. You know, even if it's just having a good time, it's got to kind of be about something. It's a bit like the Catholic thing again, you know, I mean, what I talk about in the show tonight, it's like that vibe of you've got to put something back. It's impossible to be a hedonist because by the time you've rejected all that indoctrination and brainwashing, you've got to have rebelled at quite a deep level.
Tommy, go back to, when was it, 2009?
2009, yes, January 2009. I think you can already understand why Celebrity Big Brother for me was an easy gig, absolutely pish easy, because this man here could talk the hind legs off a donkey, but he's got so many interesting stories. He's like an encyclopedic mind, his history of music, but also just history generally. So me, him and the bold Coolio, we became the trio, and we just talked and talked and talked. I mean, there was all sorts of dramas going on. Terry, you remember all the tears and all that.
Invented dramas.
Oh, it was a lot of pish. But what you had was, we just loved it. We had a great time. I mean, we genuinely enjoyed ourselves. I mean, we've sometimes got involved. I mean, you.
Oh yeah, and then Ben as well, because we had orange bowling. Okay. I invented orange bowling, mate. Created the obstacle course.
You need to get him. You need to get him, because I felt sorry for you in some respects, because they sort of took the piss a wee bit with you, because we're all in the house the Friday night. He's last in, and they make you the king of the house.
Oh yeah. Well, they wanted me out, didn't they?
And then what you had to do, what you had to do is you were the first nominee.
Make it popular.
I think it was on the basis, was it no? But on the basis of who was the least talented or something.
No,
was that later on?
Well, no. So I had to nominate 2 people. So I put Lucy Pinder. And then I forget who else, but it was one of them.
I think it was Eureka.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but well, she said she wanted to go home anyway.
All the
but
time.
She didn't like it.
By the way, that was her game.
No,
it was the sympathy.
No, she'd just given birth. But it was like.
But what was she doing in the Terry? I don't buy that as a story.
Funny.
Because she could go into. She's Eureka. She could have went into the Big Brother any time. Why would you choose only months after giving birth to a child to go in?
I thought it was weeks.
Did you say yes straight away? Both of you, did you say yes straight away, or did you doubt about it, hesitate?
I don't know what happened with Terry, but I'd been invited in 2006 after the court case, after I won the court case in Edinburgh, and I told him to take a jump because I was working at a job. I was in MSP. However, in 2009, I'm now doing a law degree. I was very, very poor. I'm trying to pay for my law fees, and they come up and offered you, I think it was 100 grand or something, or 90 grand, something like that. And I'm like, what? For sitting in a house?
Exactly.
I mean, come on, for 3 weeks in a house. Me and Terry, I don't know, he's been into me this, he may have seen figures like that, but for me, for 3 weeks money, it was just
good, and, you know, and it was like, it was one of them, but then I wasn't sure, but I kind of knew that I was, in some ways, it was too boring. Do you know what I mean? You know, so even now as a celebrity, even though everyone always spreads out the picture, if they took my hard drive in tomorrow, all they'd find is old Marvel comic covers and a few old Northern Soul tracks on it. You know what I mean? There wouldn't be anything exciting. It'd be nerd central.
I don't find that boring though.
See when no, but what I'm saying is there was, so I wasn't going to go in there and there was going to be any scandal.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, won't do me any harm. And all you were bothered about really was not being the first one voted out. I mean, the Americans all wanted to win, didn't they?
Oh, big thing.
But the rest of us
played it.
get the money,
Coolio
get
played it.
out. You know, but what was funny, I remember Coolio was saying to me, oh no, it's Vern, he said, hey, what do you win if you win? And I went, oh, you win a caravan. Right, and I'm like, bullseye. I'm all going. He said, what's a caravan? I said, like a Winnebago. And he said, do you really? And then, of course, I mean, and this is the thing that Ulrika was bad for, because you're just having a laugh, because it's boring a lot of the time. And she went, oh, God, don't be so ridiculous. And it's kind of bringing the mood down for no reason. Because she was all right, really, but I don't know why she wanted to do that.
She was very moody, and I thought she was playing the game. I thought she was looking for sympathy. I couldn't understand if she was so sad about being separated from her child, which I think must have been sad. Why do it that year? She is famous. She could have done it next year. She could have chosen her year, Terry. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I never ever had a chance to ask you, was whether you get any of the mightier than now type of comments from people who thought you were selling out by going on to it, because I got that.
Did you?
I remember articles getting written in the Herald that, oh, Tommy Sheridan, imagine agreeing to go into this show. It was as if you were crossing a picket line or something.
No.
I hated it.
They do that all the time. You know, it's like you go and you do something, it's like, and you're just going, mate, you know, I'm not very tolerant of that, and I don't care. You know, I go, so what? I mean, the only time I've ever got on my high horse was when I was on TalkSport doing the football phoning, and I used to take the mickey out of all the other fans every week. That was my brief, right? It was a really bad brief, and I used to do it with Mickey Quinn. You know, he's a Scouser, and he played for Newcastle, and so that was the thing. And I used to lay ambushes for him every week, you know, to help get it all going. And the one week I said, look at Liverpool and Arsenal. I said, they're never going to win the league. They're there. A little bit of cold weather, they've got snoods on, tights, gloves, blah, blah, blah. I said, United Fergie wouldn't have that. Short sleeves, get out there in the snow, run around a bit. And so Mickey Quinn went, he said, well, what about Wayne Rooney? He wears gloves. I went, Scouser, fingerprints.
Fingerprints.
I'd waited all week for that one. I had it lined up for him. Come on to my thing, so...
What did you make, Terry, of the recent comments by Wayne Rooney, which came as no surprise to yourself, JP, or me, that when he was asked what club would you wish you had played for, he says Celtic. And there was this kind of Gary Neville's looking at him as if, wow, why would you want to play for Celtic? I think they downplay it down south quite a bit, don't they? The size of club Celtic is.
Well, I think in some ways there was that choice years ago where Celtic and Rangers could have and maybe should have joined the Premier League. Although what that would have done to Scottish football generally. But it's almost as if, I mean, sooner or later that's going to happen, I think. And imagine how big and how much more competitive it would make the Premier League, and the amount of money that would then go into Celtic and Rangers. You know, you'd be able to compete like you could in the 70s and 60s, you know, in terms of Europe and all the rest of it. I mean, even the 80s. But it's one of them, isn't it? It's like they wouldn't put a Great Britain team into the Olympics in football because they're scared that FIFA might say, we'll have one of them all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and yet once upon a time, can you imagine a Great Britain team in the 70s or 60s? It would have been amazing.
Do you know about one of the criticisms, Terry, which may be rebounding in the English game? Because one of the criticisms is always, and understandably, it's only ever one team or two teams that win the league. You guys...
Heading that way.
Is it 4 years now they've won it? I mean, it's becoming a wee bit of coming back to haunt
They'll
you.
be playing Macclesfield Town next year.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
So talking about that, again, I'm going to go back to the 90s where you had the Manchester movement. Terry, you were right at the ahead of the curve there.
Well, 89 really was Manchester. Yeah. Although I hated the phrase.
Who coined that?
It was one of the guys who did the Happy Mondays video. And then it was... So around the time of the Manchester Rave On,
my first
he did that.
Ever bought.
Yeah, what the double 7-inch gates.
Mings was Adam and the Ants.
But it was weird because really you had this great scene in Manchester because you had a lot of bands that have been around for a long time. So the Stone Roses have been around since like '85. Well, they did the first demo tape in August of '84. but hadn't got any music press. You had, you know, all those people like Chaplain the Verse, Ruthless Rap Assassins, MC Busby, all the black music. That was really big in Manchester. You know, Prince Cool, the first hip hop. Yeah, 808 State. But then you had in Spiral Carpets. They were getting play off John Peel from about 87, 88. Happy Mondays were getting a lot of write-ups, but without really having great songs. You know, without really hitting through. But there was a lot of, you know, even bands like James were on a bit of a hiatus, but they were there still, and they'd all been around for a long time, and suddenly they all started coming through. And what happened was the Roses were leading it all, the Stone Roses, and Tony Wilson just wanted to tag the Happy Mondays on the coattails of the Roses and try and make the Hacienda the centre of it. And so Manchester, and then it was defined to be just Bagley. All the black music went out the window. Nobody talked about a guy called Gerald, Ruthless Rap Assassins, or MC Busby, who got the biggest deal of the Manchester era off Polydor, because he was a genius, the Morrissey of rap.
See, when you were doing music, covering music, did you find that the press weren't looking for you to focus on a band like the Ruthless Rap Assassins?
Well, no, because obviously because I was from that area, so I always did. You know, I grew up with black music and understood it, and always covered it on my other shows. You know, because I'd won two National Sony Radio Awards, you know, for Best Specialist Music Show before I did The Word, and I went to Manchester at that era as a blue-eyed boy, and they gave me carte blanche. 5 days, 6 till 9 p.m. every evening, and 2 till 5 Sunday afternoon. I could do what I want. No one else on the station was allowed to speak more than once every 3 records. They weren't allowed to do competitions, interviews, sessions, just me.
Brilliant.
So I was like that. I had throwing muses doing sessions for me, Pixies. I got the Pixies in to do an acoustic session and an interview. And the day that they came in, they walked straight into the studio. And the first thing Frank Black said to me was, "Hey, who are this band, the Stone Roses?" And it was the Monday that the album come out, and they'd been pressing the flesh, you know, around all HMV and Virgin and that in Manchester, because Doolittle was like number 8 in the charts at the time, the album charts, which was big for them. So they were going in thanking everyone. And when they were in the record shops, just a queue of kids buying the Stone Roses album because it would come out that day, and they'd never heard of them. But nearly all the sales of that Roses album were just in Manchester. And in Manchester, it came out the same day as Disintegration by The Cure and whatever the Simple Minds album was at the time, 89. And it outsold...
Street Fighting Years?
Yeah, and it outsold both those albums put together 3-1. Wow. The volume of the Stone Roses album. So it's just a great... I mean, I remember punk and all the rest of it. There was never a scene like that scene in Manchester, because it was so bottom up and it was all kids, and even all the big baggy flares and stuff like that came from the girls, all these 15, 16-year-old girls who wanted to hang around and wanted something comfortable to wear. You know what I mean? Without getting whatever, go out and get drunk in and stuff like that.
I was wearing them in primary 7 at school, flares and like Pepe flares and Chippy jumpers and all that.
And then also there's a young lad, but not young now, from Salford called Carl Campbell. And he was the one who, I mean, he's one of them, he's like a persistent, but he started off, you know, getting Joe Bloggs to sponsor like the Mondays, and then getting everyone free gear. And that he did that for years, Carl Campbell. You know what I mean? He started it, you know, this idea that, oh, you've got a clothing brand, you give it to a band. They never used to do that. You'd probably get Levi's if you asked them.
See, you mentioned with black artists from Manchester. The first live band that I ever saw was they were the opening band on a 3-band bill, and they were called Khalif.
Oh, the Cleats. They were from Rochdale, really, yeah.
Oh, were they? Oh, I thought they were Manchester.
But... No, one of them was from Withington.
Right.
The others were Rochdale lads. Let them off.
But they were on the Word.
Yeah, we're doing...
Vibe the Joint.
Yeah, so the Cleats, and that's why I struggled to get Oasis on that show, because Tarquin and Tristan were going, but Terry, we can't have 2 bands from Manchester on the same show. And
Tarquin and Tristan.
Well, you know what I mean. I say that so I don't sound like an inverted snob.
And you were involved with the booking the bands.
Well, I had to, because it was the show got its name off my column in the Evening News, the Word page. Although they never gave me credit for that either. And it was like, and it used to drive me mad. I go, well, why have I got this on? I remember the guy who booked the bands for the first series, the guy called Tim Bird, and he actually managed A1.
Right.
You know, Ben Adams' band. The
Oh,
boy band.
no, M1.
No, A1.
A1.
John McLaughlin.
A1, M1.
Oh, but still.
Did he? Yep.
Yeah, so he managed A1 and Steps. So that was his level. And but he was very controlling over the music, you know, and I'm sure he was, oh, he will get sued here, but you know what I mean?
He had to realise very, very soon in the Big Brother is, I didn't have a clue. It's terrible.
I remember you did have pretty bad taste in music.
Carly Simon, I love Carly.
Oh no, she's all right. I'll let you off there.
She's beautiful.
But it was like, but he was hiding the stuff. So I remember I wanted to get Manic Street Preachers on doing Motown Jump, and he said he was from Leeds, but he went, well, they're not available, Terry. They're not available this week. You know, like, I thought, right, I'm going to check up because I don't trust this. So Sue, my ex, was one of the top pluggers to radio and TV in the country. She broke the Stone Roses and Oasis and everyone else. All the big albums of that era she worked, you know, Pixies, Doolittle, De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, Inner City, Paradise, all of that. And so I said to her, I said, oh God, I want to get them. She said, oh, I know blah, blah, blah works there. I'll give them a ring. She rang me and said, they'd love to do the Word. So after that, kept an eye on him. Yeah. And then he got the bullet, actually. So they wanted a new, so then I bought Jo Wiley and I worked with her on Radio 4.
Wow.
On a show called WPFM. That's the only thing I could get near with an accent like mine, a youth programme, which meant talking about Rush every week with Anna Raven.
But it was, I mean, even for somebody like me who's not into music, the word was just absolutely out there. I mean, it was just, Friday night, not into music, but I always watched the Word because it was cool. Yeah. It was a cool show.
Well, we had some good guests on. You'd have some interesting little bits, you know, doing the young preacher. John Wayne Bobbitt getting his sliced.
Jim Rose Circus.
You were always a bit naughty. You were always a bit risky.
It was on the edge. It was always on the edge.
Danny Bear was beautiful as well. Of
People
course,
wind up. It was, you know, it was sense of humour. We took the piss out of ourselves as well.
You did. You were brilliant. It was great.
But see you as an interviewer back then, Terry, you asked difficult questions. You had no fear.
Well, I talk about that in my stand-up show.
Yeah.
It's not so much I had no fear, it's because it was almost a people-pleasing aspect. And it was supposed to be that sort of show, and I'd said what sort of show it was, and then it was like Tarquin and Tristan said, well, you've got to do this. So I talk about in my stand-up show this a lot, and a lot of it comes from my mum. And my mum, I had to please my mum, you know, because my sister died, everyone wants to keep her happy. And she'd send you to like the greengrocers. You know, you send kids out on errands, didn't they, in them days? And she'd say, you tell that greengrocer that those potatoes last week were full of eyes. And you'd have to do it. Deliver that. She said, what's your bloody mother said this week? You deliver that. And then you tell that butcher that stewing meat was horse meat. Not like horse meat. Oh, no. My mum wouldn't euphemise like that. She'd say it straight. So I felt that kind of pressure from Tristram and Sebastian and Tarquin. When they said, do this, I thought, well, that's my job. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can't.
You met your match in Zsa Zsa Gabor, though. I remember that.
Well, I was okay with her. Here's the weird thing.
She was flirting with you.
No, I was fine with her. What happened was, and I was going to sue him, was Mark Lamar was really rude to her and kept using phrases like shagging and da-da-da in front of a 74-year-old woman. No, but I mean, that's just kind of rude. That's wincy. Yeah, that's not clever. Yeah. You know, you got to have some respect to someone like her who's been around, and she's good fun. And it was like, and then some paper in Birmingham said it was me. Disgusting the way he spoke to the judge. I said, mate, first of all, before you get a letter off a lawyer, what I do is I retract that very quickly. I said, because you haven't even bothered to you've got me mixed up with Mark Lamar.
Did he?
But I mean, I should have been a lot more litigious at the time when I made a fortune. Money for old rope as well, isn't it, really?
You know,
I'd have been a lot more, and also what I didn't know at the time was that it's tax deductible.
What is it?
Tax deductible at 40% as well. Sue the bastards, and what you win is tax free.
Brilliant. A couple of moments I want to talk to you about in relation to the word. First one, Sean Ryder with Zippy.
Yeah, great. Well, I have a bit of that in my show as well. So yeah, Sean Ryder. What was weird was, and this was something that I felt guilty about, was he had a problem with heroin at the time. We didn't have a guest. Paul Ross was our editor. He was like Jonathan Ross's older brother, and he had no redeeming features whatsoever. You know, I mean, he was like, oh, what's the word for it? Almost like comfortingly immoral. Would that be the way? It's hard, or reassuringly devious. So I thought, right, we need a good guest. I was sick of crap guests because we were doing the hopefuls. You couldn't get good guests on anymore. No, another bad idea from Tarquin. You don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps. I hate those posh twats. But anyway, where are we going with this? Yes, so I said, Sean, blah, 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 if you offer him 3,000 quid, he'll come on. She said, oh, we know I don't pay more than 2, but let me have a word. So, all right, we do it. So Sean comes on, and I was big mates with Craig Cash at the time, you know, Royal Family, and he'd come down, and me and him were having a wee before the show, in the sort of, you know, the staff toilet, so to speak. And there was one cubicle in there, and it was always had like a cameraman having a dump. And Sean Ryder came in, and you know the gap between the door and the floor, he got down on all fours, stuck his hand and went, oi, lively in there. Because obviously he'd been out and spent some of his 3,000 quid already on his things. So then when the show's on, his eyes are in orbit all the way through. And then right at the end of the show, we had that kind of rainbow rave tune. Fucking awful, wasn't it? I thought he was bummerless. Oh my God. I was going to think,
Trip to Trump
who's booked this? Never mind, but you know what I mean, bought it. It's like, you know, do. So they had like a bungle and a zippy. And I just remember Sean getting up like that. And I thought, where the f*** are you going? And then he's like a spaceman, he sort of walks over to the stage and gets on and starts playing the bongos. And then he's like, you know, with their finger hugging bongo. Then he starts trying to zip his mouth up. And actually does, he zips it all the way across, but he's off it. Even Bez was shocked. Bez was going like that. And then afterwards, because of the nature of the music, oh, it was great the way you got Sean to get up on that. And I'm going, right. Even we weren't that cheesy, I think, or something like that. He just did it himself.
Let's talk a wee bit about connections between United and Celtic, Terry. Players, for example, Henrik Larsson. Start with Henrik.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, he came on loan, so obviously he was knocking on a bit, wasn't he, when we got him? He was like 32,
he was in that early 30s period,
but still looked great. Mm-hmm. You know, sort of great runs, you know, could hold the ball up. You know, he had it. You know, he was good. He was one of them when you wish maybe we bought him earlier, you know, because he deserved to play for a bigger club, didn't he?
I think Fergie tried to take
well, he did.
He
played for Barcelona.
Yes. Was that an ambush? That was an ambush.
It was. Another one, you know, looking back that I love is Brian McClare, Chalky.
Yeah, well, again, but then he changed his game, didn't he? So he ended up dropping into midfield more as a number 10, right? Because when we got him in, I think he scored 20. He was the first player we'd had since Best who scored like 29, 30 goals in a season. But what he was good at was, again, he'd lay the ball off quickly. He was a really clever player, intelligent player. I mean, it's quite funny, that story that he tells about in Rotterdam. And like Fergie, we were playing Barcelona, and Fergie said, everything depends on you. He said, the whole game, whether you win or lose, it's all on you. What you've got to do is mark Ronald Koeman. And Jockey said, and I was like, well, thanks for that. That's all. And he said, as it turned out, he did manage to nullify him. Although Koeman scored their goal, but it was from a free kick. You know, but yeah.
Brian McClare, that night that we ended up out with Mike Gary and John Cooper Clark, it's still one of the most surreal nights of my life. But I was sitting talking to him about like his time in Manchester and how he was relieved he'd lived in Hale and not Altrincham, because he was like, if I'd been in Altrincham, I'd been around Gordon Strachan and all these other guys who were all like on the sauce like during the day, and he was like, I wouldn't have had as long a career as I had if I'd been with them all the time, because they were
Strachan into that. Was he part of that culture? Was he?
Oh, man, you haven't said that. When I was bumping into Chocky in town, in Mulligan's or whatever, he was always on the sauce.
Yeah, no. I think he's I think he started later in life rather than being well.
Well, no, he was living. I think he was living in town for a bit, so I used to see him in there quite a bit. And then I think we watched the Liverpool game together where they came back from 3-0 down and won 4-3 against Barcelona. Was it? That that get
I think it was
a few years
Barcelona. Was
ago.
it not a Turkish team?
It was a
No. It was
Don't think it was Barcelona.
when they played
3-0
Barcelona
at half time,
semi.
wasn't it?
It was AC Milan.
AC Milan in the
Oh
Champions
no!
League
I'm
final.
talking about more recently than that. A real ding-dong
sorry,
game
sorry,
against Barcelona.
sorry.
So this would be about maybe 4 years ago,
Right.
something like that. I mean, I kept bumping into him in town because I remember he.
He's a lovely character.
I know.
He's a
I
lovely character.
actually
Very
asked
clever.
him. I actually asked him this. I said, because to me, the worst manager Man United have ever had is Jose Mourinho.
Right.
And I said to Chucky, I said, what is it that he's trying to do? And Chucky said to me, I don't know. I just think he fucking hates football. And that is the best explanation I've had.
I thought you were going to say Davy Moyes, another ex-Celt.
Well, no. I mean, Moyes wasn't as bad. You know,
Moyes never get the same chance, Terry.
How can you follow up
I felt a bit sorry for Moyes because all he had to do was finish top 4, then he can get his budget and buy some players, and I think he'd have done well. But he was never able to play Rooney and Van Persie for most of that season. Van Persie missed half the season injured. Rooney missed about a third of the season. If you play them together, that's an extra 20 goals, isn't it?
Yep.
And an extra 20 goals would easily get United top 4. And we probably would have won the League Cup that
It was one
year.
of the things as well, that he didn't retain a lot of the backroom staff when he came
Yeah,
in.
there was
and
that.
no continuity from Ferguson.
There was that, and then he was really unlucky with injuries when he first started, because I remember playing Michael Carrick at centre half for quite a few games early doors. And that's never good. I mean, all this stuff, but you can play centre half. I remember Roy Keane playing centre half for United
I
against
remember
Chelsea
that
at
as well.
home, and we lost 3-0.
Yeah.
I thought, so much for that one.
Again, there's another one. Roy Keane comes up at the tail end of his career to Celtic, but an absolute icon for Man U.
Oh yeah, brilliant. Yeah, fantastic player. You know.
You know how he's got a bit of that needle, Cherry? Again, where he doesn't care if he upsets somebody. I think that's his most endearing quality, Roy Keane.
I think that's a bit of an Irish thing as well, though, isn't it? You know, there's a lot of passive aggressiveness in it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of hold it. You've held it back for so long. It's almost like that kind of generational trauma, isn't it? Where it's a potato famine, all the rest of it. You know, because there's a certain shyness about the Irish, but there's a certain do you know what I mean? There is that that side. You know, they have got that side. I say that as if I'm like Mr.
Polite guy.
Yeah, Mr. Lights.
Well, I've spoke to you before about the book you wrote on Oasis, and you saw it from the very beginning. You gave them their kind of breakthrough TV performance on UK television. What was it about them that captured your imagination?
No, all it was with me was that they were a kind of poppier version of the Stone Roses, and Liam was a better singer and younger. So the Stone Roses at Techham's, I think by the time they made it, Ian Brown was about 28, but Liam was he was only 20, and he could sing, and then they had that kind of that 60s-ish vibe about them, but it was just a bit more poppy, and I was really impressed with that second demo. And I knew Noel anyway, because my missus worked in Spiral Carpets, and then Noel's then girlfriend Louise Jones, who we lived with in town, she worked for Sue. She worked for her. And then, so when Noel was sort of laid off from the Spiral Carpets as a technician cum roadie, they give him a payoff, and he then joined Liam's band. And he was always pushing me, but I mean, he was mad. He's giving me cassettes saying, "Can you get us on the word?" I said, "Well, we don't put bands on them outside." But we did have a show called Access All Areas.
Right.
But he was a bit too late for that. You know what I mean? So it was so when I got the chance, I did. But what I had to do was put him and Liam on the guest list to come and pester our then music booker to his face, because that's how a lot of bands were getting on, mithering him to the face. And it was interesting because we already had the Cleefs, and I was getting, they can't have two Manchester Bends on the same show. And it was only because a band pulled out that we had them on.
Wow.
And yet, you know what they're like in the media, the lovey-doveys, it's like success has many fathers and fame is an orphan. Once you've got them on and they've gone big, they said, "Oh, we did them a big favour, we love them." Going, mate, you didn't even show them in the repeat, because we used to do shortened versions as repeats that would be shown in the summer at about 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night. We'd use 2/3 of all the band's performances from the previous series. They didn't use the Oasis one doing Supersonic. And yet, when the next series started in November, it's like, "Oh, we're going to have Oasis on, and we help. We help them, and it's really important that we have this dickhead. He was from Aberdeen, called Duncan Gray, but a mate of Michael Gould's, as it turned out. Posh, didn't sound Scottish, but from Aberdeen, into United and Aberdeen because of Fergie. So he's going, well, you know, I love Oasis, Terry. I think it's really important that we get... And he was made the editor, I don't know why, or what it was. Sorry, Duncan, but you know it's true. And he's got banging on like this. He said, but we got to insist that we get the world exclusive. I said, what are you on about? He said, well, they want to do later. And I said, they can't do later as well. I said, well, who cares if they do later and us? Are later bothered about them doing us as well? He said, well, no, but we did them a favour. I said, oh, hang on a minute. There's only one of us did them a favour here, right? And it certainly wasn't you. I don't remember you in the room with Tarquin or the rest of them. And then it was like, so basically, because of this pure ego, I said, well, they're going to want to go on later because they can do 2 or 3 songs on later. They can only do the single on ours. We didn't have them on, so instead we had a world exclusive of Dog Eat Dog. Whatever happened to them? But that's the kind of utter top hat that I had to work with for years.
And the thing is, like JP and I, we would have tuned in every week. It's something that we still talk about to this day. Yet you were up against it. You reckon it could have been a lot better, Terry?
Oh God, a million times better. I mean, another band, and because they took this perverse delight in annoying me, you know, getting me triggered. Because I think they liked me giving them the rough edge of my tongue, you know what I mean? Because I get really annoyed about it. Because I'd go, who have we got on this week? And be like, Mother Earth. I said, another bunch of white guys with goatee beards playing old 70s funk. Acid jazz.
I remember them.
Yeah, but I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't.
Oh, wasn't it zeitgeist stuff?
It was nothing. It didn't exist outside London. Nobody gave a about it. It wasn't a scene. New wave of new waves, smashed, and these out. Who gives a the shit? Why are we booking them?
What was the Nirvana? How did the Nirvana thing come about?
Well, that was much earlier. I mean, but you knew they were going to be big anyway. You know, they had the record company behind them. You know, and they were like, you know, they were plugged, and that was much earlier. But it was like later on, and so I wanted to get this band on, the Cranberries, and they wouldn't have them on. You know, doing Linger.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, Sue worked them when they did a single called Uncertain, and we went to see them then, and they were brilliant, but they just didn't have a record out at the time. I couldn't believe it. And then when we had this do for the 20th anniversary of the Word, and the guy was a then music booker, they said to him, what's your biggest regret when you did the Word? He said, not booking the Cranberries. And I went, it's not like you weren't f***ing mithered for about 8 weeks, you stupid. Sorry, God rest his soul. But you know what I mean? It was like that. He said, right, I'm getting triggered again. I'm reliving my trauma. You've got no idea. What it was like being the gardener on Downton Abbey. I'm the gardener. Right? I've got to go into the room with Tarquin, Tristram, Quentin, Sebastian, Estrella, Camilla, whatever, and go, well, I just think we should plant the roses in April this year, Squire. How dare you speak out of turn? Go away, man, we'll plant the roses in June and keep quiet until then. And that's how you felt.
Was it a north-south thing? Was it a... Oh, obviously.
It was, honestly...
Talent and talentless.
Yeah.
It was... Look, I'd worked on the radio, right, doing my own show, bringing people through as an access show. The guy who did my jazz funk slot for me for 4 years, Devon Daly from Derby, he ended up as Trevor Nelson's producer on Radio 1 for about 5 years. A lad called Tim Hopewell who helped out on our show, his dad was a painter and decorator from Nottingham. He ended up directing the last series of 7 Up on ITV. So I'd always brought these people through, you know, even KFM when I worked there, Carolina Hearn, Craig Cash, my sidekick on my show doing 10 till 1 in the morning. I thought, who'd be interested to do a bit of weird stuff to go with all the weird music we're going to play? So it was a guy who was managing a band in Manchester called the Man from Del Monte, who were like Smith's fans' 3rd favourite band. And he got the sack from them, and I thought it'd be great, I'll bring him in. John Ronson. So these were like people with talent, and then suddenly you're working with a load. They'd done 6 months of this and 6 months of that. They didn't really have a lot of imagination, but they imagined themselves to be good because they'd gone to some war games and wanking public school. and on the daddy's money, you know, gone to like Oxford or Cambridge. I mean, you know, you talk to them, they thought they were super intelligent, and I thought, mate, if I'd spent 30 grand a year sending you to fucking rugby or Harrow or whatever, and you didn't get into Oxford and Cambridge, I'd want my fucking money back. You know what I mean? No, but I know I used to say this to them. Now I'm getting triggered, I don't know. This is all in my show.
This all sounds similar. I've watched a lot of Tony Wilson interviews, right? And this all sounds very similar to a lot of the obstacles that he came up against in the music industry.
Well, I mean, well, again, because he was super smart. He was he was too clever by half, kind of thing, Tony. But there was a lot of that, and a lot of that came out of those Catholic grammar schools because we were a bit more working class. Tony sounded posher, but his dad just owned a tobacconist, didn't it? So he had money. It wasn't like he was, you know, going on Concorde or, you know, going off to his villa in the south of France, you know, like these lot. I mean, I remember like Amanda, you know, working with Amanda de Cadney, and that's what they did. They thought, they've got me, you know, council estate, 1 of 6 kids, blah, blah, blah. Let's stick him with the posh girl whose dad has won Le Mans sports rally, Alan de Cadney, French aristocracy.
I didn't know this.
Worth pots of money, worth hundreds of millions, his family, and her mum's family were loaded too. Put them together. And one of the best things was, she was only 18, she was great, Amanda. She was doing a soul weekend from Prestat in Pontins, right? And on the talk back before, she goes, oh right, and where am I staying tonight? And they said, a chalet. And she was like, oh great.
But not a challenge, you thought.
Well, no, and I remember thinking, well, you know, I've been on holiday at Pontins. You know, I knew the sort of chalet she was thinking of, you know, sauna in the basement, you know, with a full staff and a view of the Swiss Alps. Right? Whereas I knew, having been to Pontins, you know, it's more like, it looked like what Charles Bronson was tunneling out of in The Great Escape. So, yeah, that was quite funny, Amanda. And then she went, do people actually go on holiday here? Oh, shut the up.
Butlins it was for us.
Butlins is posh. Butlins is you posh twat. You know what my mum used to say? We said, well, why can't we go to Butlins? Because you got a free phone fare at Butlins.
Yeah.
She'd go, oh, it's not as good as Pontins. Pontins is cheaper. And we're going to Squires Gate once every 2 years.
Well, for a great show, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. Sorry to bring him down a wee bit, Paul John. I'm sure you'll forgive me, and I know that Terry will forgive me. But a good friend of mine that had a wee bit of tragedy at the weekend. Young guy, 21 years of age, Joe McConville, died tragically. He loved Celtic, home and away, absolutely loved them. And the family have asked for the fans on Sunday in the 21st minute if they would join a minute's applause against Hibs at Paradise, if they would give us applause in the 21st minute in memory of Joe. So, sorry to bring the mood down a wee bit, but I promised the family that I would make an appeal to the Celtic family, and I'm sure they'll respond in their thousands.
Good on you, Tommy. Thoughts and prayers with Joe's family as well. Just before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to cover, Terry? And then we'll wrap up.
Any more of my bitterness and resentment? Come and see it at my show, that's all it is.
That's what we'll talk about.
One big diatribe of inverted snobbery, bitterness and resentment with a few Catholic saints. In fact, what I do is I just say my life's been a bit shit, but it's all shit Jesus' fault.
So earlier on, Terry, you were talking about, you know, being in your scratcher, being on the dole and how it happened by accident. But there's a wee bit of humility in there as well, because obviously you've had the talent to be able to identify new and up-and-coming bands, giving them that access on the radio, and then when you're on the word, being able to identify talent as well. So I think you're giving yourself a hard time there.
Well, it's not me. I mean, what I would do is consult other people. So my music collection, all the great records I know about, were told to me about from other people. And you learn taste off your mates growing up, you know, and like, you know, that like all the black lads, remember they'd be playing stuff and they'd be like going, King of Kings by Jimmy Cliff. You know, hearing that and all the Desmond Dekker stuff and you know, all the stuff they were playing, and you know, then going through school and even borrowing. I mean, our Tony was in the same class at St Bede's as Rob Gretton, you know, who managed New Order and Joy Division. And I remember like getting drunk with Rob Gretton going down on the train to London, then meeting him tragically on the train back and forgetting that I'd moved house. Stayed on the train to Manchester. I thought, no, I should have got off at Stockport. but Gretton used to lend our Tony records.
Right.
So Captain Beefheart and King Crimson and all that stuff, although he's a big soul boy as well. So without even knowing, all that stuff is almost like come from the universe to you. But even now, if I want to know what's going to be good, I'll ask a 15 or 16-year-old in an appropriate way.
Yeah, but
Not down the pub.
Terry, you one of the things that you underplay yourself. Your ability to retain information is fantastic. It's absolutely
I call it to my
fantastic.
therapist, it's a sign of trauma. You need all the information you can get so that it doesn't happen
But,
again.
I mean,
But I
you
mean,
know,
the
you ask this guy
library.
anything. That's 3 weeks in the house. You ask him anything about
But it's
any
the
era.
library, it's just,
bang,
a lot,
bang,
it's just,
bang.
a lot,
It's
of,
you're
it's just a lot
library.
of reading. Yeah, library. You know, libraries are massive.
But you're a
to
human
me.
library. You're a human
Well,
library.
yeah, but you read what you're interested in. You know, so I was always
Yeah, but we all
interested
read things, but we don't remember them. You remember them.
Hey, St. Bees, you got battered if you didn't. it was, you know, it wasn't like getting told off. It was like corporal punishment, 3 on each hand for not doing your homework or for not remembering
The
stuff.
belt.
The worst thing they did at St. Bees was because, you know, obviously I'm one of loads of kids. There's nowhere to do your homework. That's not freezing. You'd be in the kitchen, 3 of you on a 4-mica table like that. So if a teacher said you want prefect of discipline, i.e. 3 on each hand with a leather strap or detention, I'd want a detention because you could be in a warm classroom for an hour, break the back of your homework and even get to watch Star Trek or whatever later on. But some teachers would be mean and give you coursework to do, but most wouldn't. But at our school, you'd be rounded denounced as a coward for not taking a 3
the
on
belt.
each hand.
Yeah.
And I used to go, go on to detention, really, you know. And you go, but it's sort of,
Remember when they weren't very good at it and now way up your wrist?
well, even worse, the first time I went was for throwing snowballs in the line, you know, when I was only 11, and it was like, you know, so that first winter. And I remember like, it hurt that much. That when and we were only getting 2 on each hand for that because it was a collective punishment. When it came again, I flinched naturally, it caught my fingertips.
terrible.
And then I got another 1 on each hand.
A lot of the younger viewers won't have a clue what we're talking about here.
Thankfully, I don't.
But it used to happen at school.
What year did they get kibosh?
I don't know.
80s.
Late
Was it
80s was it? Yeah.
Thankfully, it was.
I mean,
well,
shave.
well, they used to do those programmes, those documentary things, didn't they? On Channel 4 or BBC 2, you know, 1960s school, and you go, without getting hit, it's a dog that doesn't bark, because the teacher could do what they want. So you like get a full duster chucked at your head that might whiz past your bloody ear and all that, or come up behind you and pull your hair and whack you around the head, you know, when you weren't looking.
imagine that.
Good old days.
Sadistic, it really is. Tommy was speaking earlier about you taking him down to Old Trafford, Terry.
Oh,
Has
yeah.
Tommy repaid that debt? Have you come up to Celtic Park yet? We need to make it happen.
We did take Coolio, he loved it.
Yeah,
that was
but
amazing.
Did he understand what was going on,
I went
Coolio?
viral,
Do you know what he loved? I think
The
I've said this
atmosphere.
before. He loved the atmosphere. It's a bit like walking out of Old Trafford and you like look at the stadium. It's like an amphitheatre, absolutely beautiful, and he loved that. But I said to him, we were in the Celtic stand, we're right across from the Green Brigade, and I said to him they'd offered to have me go down and do the draw, and I'm sure they'll do the same
yeah,
for you.
yeah,
You the
yeah,
last
the
year you
draw.
come and do the draw.
I've
right?
done the
half-time
half-time
draw,
draw
right?
at
And I
Old
said to him,
Trafford.
whatever you do, Coolio, don't mention the Green Brigade and don't mention me because I'm no well thought of with a board and all that. The ball Coolio goes down, and the interviewer, I can't remember who it was.
Jerry.
Jerry, it was Jerry says to him, says, "So, Coolio, what brings you paradise and all that? What brings you here?" And he says, "The Green Brigade and Tommy Sheridan." The 2 things I told them not to do.
Done a lap of honour.
And he goes,
There's a lab. Oh, he's brilliant. He loved it.
straight out of Calvin, straight out of Compton, into
Say
Calvin.
Colton,
That's it.
Compton at the Cal.
Good line.
Brilliant.
That's
But
a
you
good
need
line.
to come. Yes,
Oh no, definitely will.
Thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind, Terry.
Hey, cheers for
Good
that.
man.
A pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind, where we were joined by Terry Christian. Join us again next Friday night for This Is A Celtic State of Mind.